Because why not? I don't know. I mean, there might be people around. Let's toss it up there, or toss it in the Xbox thing for the hell of it, because why not? I don't know. It's nice to be able to stream again, whether it's working or not. I don't expect to get any actual viewers. But yeah, it's running, I don't know, like 2 minutes, and it's still not showing on the XSplit side that there was any kind of chat on the YouTube side or that I was broadcasting. It was a little disturbing there, seeing as in theory my account's in good standing again. On-air wasting time, that should be the one. Okay. I have no idea what happened there. I hope it's not just some weird problem with XSplit. I actually had a fun conversation the other day. It was weirdly enough on one of Steve's hangs. I joined in toward the tail end of this thing that ended up running like 8 hours because he split it about the 4 hour mark. But I had a fun time there. We had this one guy that was an astrocartographer or something like that and was doing studies of exoplanets and whatnot. So that was interesting. Got to do some Q&A, learn some stuff. It's always nice. It's rare that you get those opportunities. Yeah, it looks like it's broadcasting. Hey, it even shows a viewer or two. And there's a link out there in case everyone wants to like stare at the screen mindlessly or join us.
Is it live yet? Or
Yeah, we're in theory we're on. It's showing that we have like a viewer or two, so you know, I guess it exists. So I guess they weren't lying when they gave me back my ability to broadcast. I was a little curious the first time around. Oh, we got midnight coming in. Here we go. Let me grab my bottom bar here.
yeah, I don't see anything on your channel yet.
Well, it should pop up in a couple seconds. It should, in theory, be
Maybe
there.
not.
Granted, I'm on the proper Shadow channel now. 13, the attempt to broadcast there was a total screw up. Because this is the one I tend to use these days. There we go, grab this.
It's on 13 Heathens.
Nah, I try not to use that one anymore. That was kind of a screw up on my end. I wasn't trying to broadcast to that when I clicked the wrong channel.
Which channel?
It should be on Shadow Heathen.
Shadow Heathen. Okay, well
Yeah.
let me try that one.
Yeah, me initially loading up 13 Heathens, that was just a total screw up. I was shocked that anyone found it before I took it down. I think it was only online for like, I don't know, 30 seconds. Oh, here we go. There we go, and we will let the alt in there. And let's get some size here, because Alexander K., good morning to you as well. I'm kind of sorry that you're awake with the rest of us, because, yeah, this is Insomnia speaking.
Yeah, I see it. I see it now. It's like,
yeah.
Well, Shadow, I got it. I got to hand it to you, dude. You finally got 2 books done and published after going through all the shit you went through and the stroke and another stroke and this and that, and you got 2 books actually fucking published, man. Congratulations, dude. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you, Heavy. One of the deals with that though was now originally the first version that was that I was going through and having edited, I decided I hated the ending of it. I'd been actually hating the ending for a while, but the first editor that I'd been dealing with was like, well, you know, I want to just finish going through it and don't change the ending. And like, but I don't like it. So I when we changed editors, I went through and I added, I think it was like 10 chapters that I think really helped. And I think the closing point on some levels is a lot better. But now it's begging for a third book, so to speak, with the way that that one closes out, because there's still some unresolved shit I got to deal with. So now I'm working on book 3, and I've got one of these points that I'm looking at it going, oh my god, did I really set myself up to write this scene? Holy crap.
I mean, considering all you went through, that's a super accomplishment. Really, props to you.
Well, I mean, part of the thing is that I keep throwing challenges while I'm working this in front of myself because I want my brain back the way it used to be, and I, on some levels, accept it never will be fully there. But I want to get it as close as I can, so I keep trying to challenge myself with harder and harder sequences. And the one I'm looking at right now, I'm just kind of going, okay, why did I paint myself into this corner? I just put the main character in a position where there's potentially up to 14 adversaries they have to deal with. And I'm looking going, this might be a no-win situation, and I need to verify this by actually loading it into the Roll20 app and running it as if it was a role-playing game to see if she could even survive it. Because it's not looking good right now. So I might have to come up with a better way of handling it so that, because I don't want to throw a scene in there that, you know, you have some characters like, they're going to win because they're wearing plot armor. I hate that. So I have to basically figure out a way to work it so that, you know, so the readers buy it, so to speak. Not the book, mind you, but the scene. So it's not like, okay, that's fucking ridiculous. How did this? No. I mean, granted, with her ability, she could bring the ceiling down on everyone, but that doesn't exactly win the fight now, does it? That kills everyone. That's no good. It's, you know, what am I going to do? So then it's a matter of figuring out how to kind of work it so that it makes some damn sense. And I'm kind of stuck in that right now because it's going to be really hard to write just on a logistics level because there's too much going on at once. And part of me trying to get my brain working again is trying to recover the ability to actually handle that much going on. Because one problem I had, and this was actually after the last stroke, was tracking everything that's going on at the same time. Because when you're, so to speak, working on the scene, you're looking at your main character, there's other stuff going on, but if you can't on some level track what's going on off camera, you're not doing it right. Because otherwise, effectively, any character that's not in the forefront effectively disappears from the frame if you don't actually keep track of where they are off camera, if you get my meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see this in books and movies and what have you, that, you know, you have your little bit of action scene and everything that you're not focusing on in terms of the action, effectively everything stops. So you have somebody that's like, okay, and this person's over here doing this, and then everything pauses while the main character does what they do, and then they're still in the same position, or they've kind of forgotten about them entirely, and that's just bad. You see it all the time, though. And I try not to do that. I used to be able to track, you know, all kinds of stuff, and I've lost a lot of that, unfortunately, and I have to accept that. But if you can find a tool that helps you with it, and right now, what I'm playing with is, let me add it in here on the little screen capture. Let's see now, smart select. I will just pick this window over here. There we go. And one thing that I've been using is this program called Roll20 that's actually used for hosting role-playing games. And I got my little story time window here. And
that's that thing you used to do.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the guy. Look.
And one way to keep myself honest when I'm dealing with the combat is to actually use a program. Whoops, that's a little too far out. A program like this to basically track damage and get an idea of what's going on. And it helps me keep track of where everyone is and what they're doing over the course of the action sequence. It's kind of a little bit of a cheat, but it works for my purposes very definitely.
Yeah.
So I've got my little character, and this was actually an icon I used back when I was running the games, which incidentally I'm planning on going back to in October. I'm planning on trying to start that back up sometime, probably, I don't know, mid to late October, I'm guessing. I don't know. Well after Jade's funeral, anyway, around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm planning on going back to that some point in the near future. I don't know whether we're going to go back and revisit the 12th tribe or if we're going to go to another setting. And I don't know, we might do a little bit of both. Started a new setting and ended up dumping them back on the old E2 homeworld because it's a safe place for me to run a game. Because when something happens in my universe, it happens, whether, you know, whether the game's a little bit bizarre or, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. I try to keep my universe consistent. So if something a little bit fucked up happens in a game when I introduce new species or what have you, it's something that happened. It's kind of canon, whether it's in the books or not. That's kind of my philosophy. So there have been some really, really weird circumstances at times. There was this woman I was dating years ago, back when I was working on the first rendition of the books, back prior to me picking the current main character, when I thought was going to go with that usual chosen one BS narrative and had her brother as a central character. what happened was there's this girl I was dating who, at one point, because she's like, "Oh, I want to play a game." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, fine. Well, you guys can figure out what year and what planet you want to start on." Famous last words. So she knew, knowing the timeline and knowing what planet it started on, she chose that timeline, and she did her best to try to figure out a way to get her character inserted into the book. Drove me a little batshit. And technically speaking, she managed to succeed on a very vague level. There's one throwaway line in book one in which the main character's aunt, who goes by Bookworm, that's her nickname. That's her business name, I should say. She's an information broker. And there's this throwaway line of her mentioning that some kids that go to the same school as them had stopped by to try to check on them, and she sent them away. That's as close as they got to inserting themselves into the darn thing. But yeah, drove me nuts.
I'd never really heard of that term, information broker, until Mass Effect. One of the characters in it was an information broker.
Well,
Had all this information and agents out everywhere across the galaxy and stuff.
Well, okay. There's a couple in terms of how it's handled in my universe, Corrales. There are different kinds of information brokers in terms of how they get their information. There's this one guy that's referred to as his name's Ilman, I believe, if I remember correctly. He's in Arinarax, which is a hawkoid. They think of a bipedal hawk, essentially, granted flightless in this case. And he uses the more conventional, which is you have your little spies that go out there and try and gather information. Bookworm, on the other hand, is more like the master of Google foo. Most of her stuff involves creating algorithms and what have you to go out on the net to search for information. And the two information brokers, and a lot of this isn't covered too deeply in the story itself, but these two information brokers, as well as a couple others, are tasked with trying to find specific information, and Bookworm's one that actually wins the proverbial challenge. What are us heathens doing up at this ungodly hour? It is ungodly, that's the point. Yeah. Incidentally, there's a link down there if anyone wants to pop in. I'm just spinning my wheels. I can't fucking sleep. I am just stupidly awake. I overtaxed my brain a little bit earlier and had to pass out for a little bit to reset the old neurons up there, and woke up at a stupid hour. I'm like, okay, this is great. Now I'm going to be awake. Fuck. Oh, and of course, hi Gretchen. How you doing out there? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, part of why it took so long with getting the books out there, though, is that I needed to release them both at the same time. There's a bit of the cliffhanger with the way the first one ended, and, you know, as long as people know there's a second one out there, I don't think I'm going to have to worry about a lynch mob. Because that's almost a cruel way to end it, which is also part of why the first one's cheaper. That, you know, I put it a little bit lower because, especially in like communities like ours, we've had people put out books before, and mind you, I'm not including Aaron Ron here. He actually had things like editors, a publishing company that approached him, and this and that. So I know that people have actually looked over his book prior to publication. But most of the stuff we see here, you know, we're talking about people that don't even necessarily know what grammar is, and they don't bother to hire editors. They don't get people to do professional cover art. They just throw some words on a piece of paper and go, "I write a book," and release it out there. And so when somebody comes forward and says, I have some books and I'm trying to get some interest in them, I almost expect people to look at the track record our little corner of the community has and think, dude, no, I'm not even going to look. You know, after what Beasley had out there and what Mr. Intelligent Design tried putting out, and even Lyrical Orion, who, granted,
Richard Raspberry.
Yeah, you know, we do not have a good track record with this kind of stuff. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm expecting very limited success in this community. I'm going to have to reach outward a lot further if I'm going to market this crap. It's just a matter of getting off my ass and doing it because I'm too busy trying to work on 3.
You know, and even with the editors and stuff and proofreaders, mistakes still pop up. So.
Well, I mean, this is kind of the thing is, and this doesn't just apply with, you know, me being stuck doing the ebook thing because the agents were just sending me form letters because I don't write standard to the genre. And that's actually the words of Daw, not my own. Daw Books' initial rejection when I tried approaching them years ago was that it wasn't standard enough to the genre, and therefore they couldn't actually assess its marketability. And then they basically told me to write pulp for 10 to 20 years, and then I could write what I wanted. And I was like, I don't think so. I'm not good with that. I don't like pulp. I mean, that, and you set an expectation with readers that they're used to reading this pulp kind of whatever content you're putting out there, and then you switch to the stuff you want to write, and you end up with a similar situation to what David Drake has run into, who incidentally is one of the authors that I love plugging because he's a really super nice guy, and a Vietnam vet at that. He also kind of helped me figure out how to handle a scene at one point. I approached him and I don't know, like 5 or 6 other authors, and I heard back from 3 of them. One of them was just, I'm sorry, thank you for the interest, but I'm not going to look at your manuscript. And I was like, it's not what I'm asking. And then they never responded again. The other was Harry Turtledove, who I discovered was a massive douchebag. And then there was David Drake, who was like, well, I can't look at any manuscripts or anything like that for varied legal reasons. If you're just looking for advice, I might be able to help you with that. And I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to frame a scene. I'm not looking to send you anything. All I want to do is to get some advice on how to handle it. And he basically told me to ignore most of what happens in it.
What?
Well, okay, it's this supposed to be. It was this massive fight scene. It's space combat kind of thing. You have these technically 3 fleets involved. One of them is just a defense fleet that's guarding a Stargate, and then you have the Clotharian fleet, which is this massive collective that consciousness that are taking their little fleets in there and going to be attacking this battle platform called the Wraith, the Wraith planetoid. And there's so many things that are supposed to happen in this sequence. And I'm like, okay, how the hell do I handle it? There's too much going on. And he says, well, that's your problem. That's why you can't write it. There's too much going on. Just pick 1 or 2 points of view and ignore everything else. I'm like, but some of the other stuff's important. He's like, well, if it's important, you can either have a debriefing or recap later, or you can just add a couple more points of view. Maybe a probe or something that's viewing that they can later review the footage of. And I'm like, haha. So the actual answer was ignore the majority of it. And it ended up turning out pretty good.
I've seen somewhat things where, like, a situation like what you're talking about, and then later it's like they add in, like, from someone's point of view of what happened, that you couldn't cover at the first time. It's kind of like they broke it up or something. It's have your overall main action, and then after that, kind of break it down to different people or different groups' involvement in what happened.
Yeah. Well, I can't do it so much these days as I used to, because back in the day, full bipolar, had everything harnessed, had the reins on all, but I could track so many details at once that it was ludicrous. So I, at that point in time, knew everything that was supposed to happen during that sequence, and I'm like, okay, but how do I cram all that in? And then you have the POV character, and then you have, and it was just so much that I had in my head pertaining to the scene that it became overwhelming, and it kind of forced me into complete inaction. Because I'm just staring at it going, now what?
Did you ever see John Carpenter's Ghost of Mars?
It sounds really familiar. I'm not sure if I did.
It's not a bad movie. It started out as just a linear story. I think that's the word. Beginning, middle, end, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the editing, he had a change of mind, and he had it as a where the main character is like on trial or giving her deposition of events that happened in a small town on Mars. There were killings and stuff like that, weird shit going on.
More of like a retrospective, looking back at events.
Kind of, yeah. They were asking her questions. She's giving her thing, and she would talk about one scene. Well, we get up to this point, and then switch over to somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But then she would come back to where it dropped off and tell something from kind of someone else's point of view. I'm probably saying that very badly.
Oh, it's okay.
it was like you would get up to a certain point, then switch to something else, then she would kind of come back to it to fill it out more. In the movie, it worked. The way that it was set up, this going kind of back and forth worked, and then in your mind, you get the idea of the whole stream of action that happens, even though it's broken up like that.
And in this, if I remember correctly, I think it's actually revisited to a degree in the second book when our main character switches. But we have the initial telling of it, which is actually a drone in the area that's just watching the action. And then we get more of a direct first-person narrative in the second one, in which one of the two characters that, well, yeah, it's complicated to get into without actually giving away too much. But the alternate character that's the RPOV character in book 2 was on a transport ship while this whole thing was going on. So you then in book 2 get to see that character's perspective of it well on the transport. If I remember correctly, which I might not at this point. Hell is, you know, a lot of this stuff. I periodically I need to go back and like reread my own damn writing it, because I'll get into this mindset, and this is kind of like whether you're an artist or writer, really whatever, if you do anything creative, you eventually start looking back on your own work with the idea of, this is all shit. So it's good for me to occasionally go back and reread my own work and get to have that realization of, hey, this is actually pretty good. And it kind of surprises me every time I go back to look at it, because some of the stuff is like, okay, I know I wrote this, but yeah, I don't know. And I still periodically have this weird impulse of, that's it, I'm going to take this whole thing down and I'm going to tear it apart and I'm going to completely rewrite it from this vantage point. That no, my wife is in charge of the actual publishing account, because I have impulses to do that kind of shit, and it's fucking out now, you know?
I don't know, I've looked back on things that I've made or drawn over the years, and I'll run across some things, and I'm like, damn, that's pretty awesome. I really did that. You know, and I get a little pride there or whatever, real happy about it. And then I look at something else, and I'm like, what the hell were you thinking?
Dude, you don't have to tell me about that thing. I mean, I actually have stuff going all the way back to when I was in like high school and what have you. And I recently came across this one thing that it's amazing that I didn't fucking burn it when I found it. It was the first piece I ever tried having published years and years ago. And the responses I got back were kind of encouraging, and they're like, yeah, get a couple copies of these are actually the short story magazines, mind you. They're like, I get a couple copies, get familiar with the kind of stuff that we tend to print, and then resubmit to us. And my father jumps in after I talk to him about getting, starting to follow some of these sci-fi magazines and what have you. Actually, they might not have been, I think they were horror themed back then. That's more the genre I was writing in back then. Regardless. So I'm like, oh, can we start getting these? And talk to my dad, and he's like, oh, they're just trying to sell magazines. And come to find out, that is kind of standard procedure, though, to familiarize yourself with the shit they publish and write it specific to them, which is something I clearly did not do. So that was actually more of a legitimate thing. But because of that, I'm like, okay, well, my dad's probably right. I didn't bother with it. But I look back at that particular piece, and at the time I thought it was really good, and I look back at it now going, oh my god, this thing's a fucking disaster. It's all over the goddamn place. I mean, I don't like writing things that have a straight line trajectory, because I like, a little bit of chaos in there, because life is chaotic. But these things had no fucking rhyme or reason. They were fucking terrible. And I'm looking at, just glancing through it going, oh my god, what was I thinking? I actually let people see this? I thought this was publishable? What was wrong with me? The fuck? I mean, there were the bones of a good concept in there, but the story was horrible. Oh my, we're just all over the place. Just no. Just, any potential rule regarding, continuity and flow of a story and this and that, I think I'd violated all of them, roughly. I might have actually obeyed one at the time. This thing was bad. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking submitting that shit. And the response, all things considered, looking back, I think was really kind. They probably figured out that I was a kid.
It did midnight log in and fall asleep.
Well, I don't know. He logged in, switched accounts, and he
No.
might be. I don't know.
I
Then again,
am.
I'm monologuing.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I figured I'd, just stay in here and see how you
Very
guys talk.
low.
Yeah, I'm
I think
whispering.
he's being drowsy, and he's probably trying not to wake anyone up in his house.
Oh, okay.
He's one of
Yep.
those people that lives under somebody else's roof.
Hey, I don't live here for free.
Oh, dude, there's nothing wrong with that anyway around it, honestly. I mean, most people, they have roommates or what have you, and they're trying to be considerate for people they live with, whether it's housemates or parents or or family or what have you. It doesn't really matter. That's not actually a legitimate dig. Actually, that time it wasn't meant as a dig at all. How weird. I'm actually not picking on someone? How'd that happen?
Yeah, well, I'd rather live on my own. If I can help it.
Well, I don't know. Living on your own in some ways is kind of, I want to say, overrated. Well, there is a liberating aspect to it. There are time periods that you're sitting around and you start feeling isolated, and that's not healthy either.
Well, I mean, technically, no, because you still have people online.
Well, yeah, but that's just a way to try to not feel isolated. I mean, there still are those times that it's like, okay, human contact would be nice. And sometimes the online thing isn't enough. Well, that's me at least. Anyway, let me close out of this thing. I don't need that open right up. No, but yeah, she's got a lot of crap going on. And I'm planning on a little bit of collateral damage because she's gonna fuck some shit up. She always does.
Wait, who are you talking
No,
about?
I'm looking at the Roll20 screen.
Oh.
I just glanced back over at that and started talking to myself out loud because I'm neurotic. I do that.
It's 4 a.m. and I'm still up.
I don't know. I think writing and insanity go kind of hand in hand.
I mean, genius and insanity go hand in hand.
Well, I don't think I'd push it as far as genius, but yeah, I think you have to be a little nuts to want to write to begin with, frankly. I mean, just the time commitment, and you don't know if there's going to be any kind of return on the effort. And when I say return, I don't necessarily even mean monetary. I mean, I put this thing out there thinking, I just hope somebody likes it. Ah.
But see, I found that if you tell people you're gonna write a book, most of them will be like, "Oh, it's you can't do it," or "There's no money in it, there's no guarantee." Well, I'm like, that's some nice support.
Okay. Generally speaking, there isn't much money in writing. There isn't much return based on the time that goes in. It's as simple as that. For most people, there isn't and won't be. All you can really do is do it as a labor of love and throw it out there and hope that you entertain some people. And if you do, great. And if you don't, so be it.
So how do you explain the popularity of Twilight?
Okay. The popularity of both 50 Shades and Twilight, I'll tackle both of them. These are people that were out there on the basic, for all intents and purposes, fanfic forums. Now, not specifically necessarily even fanfic, but there are sites that are for people that are just working on whatever direct they're currently working on. And through that, you get people that follow your work, whether it's technically good or not. And I mean good on a technical level. In terms of the writing. And if you get enough of an audience on there and on social platforms like Twitter and what have you, you could write the worst fucking thing in the world, a la 50 Shades of Grey, and still get published because they know that they will make sales. Now, with these books, generally the first run will be fairly limited. Twilight, I believe, was actually self-pub first, but it made enough sales that it was picked up by a publisher. And when these things are picked up by publishers, real publishers, mind you, reputable ones, what they do is they hire a editing team to go through with the author and actually make a cohesive fucking book out of it. So they basically have the person coached to turn this piece of shit that they've put out previously into something that will not overly embarrass the publishing company. Well, overly embarrass them in relation to the amount of money that they make over it, because in the end, it's about the money.
Well, I think I remember. Well, I know that it's always about the fucking. Never mind. But if I remember correctly, I think a friend of mine read some Fifty Shades of Grey, and the way the grammar, like the paragraph was written, was just so bad. Like,
But did they
that's
read the original or the reprint after a publishing company had approached the author?
a good question. I don't remember.
Yeah, that's frequently the thing. I know in the original it was absolutely dog-ass terrible in terms of the spelling, everything was just atrocious in it. But normally, when people are approached by a publishing company, they try to make that clean. They try to get that all cleaned up so that the English is English. But having an audience is kind of the key thing. Having that pre-existing audience is a huge freaking deal when it comes to publication. If you have that audience and they know they're going to make a certain number of sales, they're more than happy to work with you. If you're an unknown commodity, then it's considered a substantial risk and they're much less likely to deal with you. This is why a lot of publishing companies, first off, you pretty much need an agent to even get through there too. They're kind of the gatekeepers of it all. And if they can't easily pigeonhole it, the agents aren't going to have much interest. Now, if you have a name and you already have a bunch of things published, whether it be in short story presses or what have you, and you already have a preset audience, you're more likely to get some traction. But there's a point when it comes to publication that the popularity contest aspect of it is much more important than the content because they're concerned with the bottom line. I mean, just in the little writers group I was dealing with, when one of them was like, well, if you despise these aspects of the publishing community that much, why don't you just self-pub? And I'm like, I've thought about it, but I don't know. And they're like, oh, I mean, how many copies do you think you could sell? I'm like, I don't know. If I went after I go through and promote it a little bit, I could probably, I don't know, sell maybe 100 copies without, trying to work my ass to pay money to have it advertised and build a big audience. And they're like, you'd be lucky to sell 10. Like, wow, you're encouraging, aren't you? I've sold almost 30 now, actually. And that's just trolling around on YouTube with my passive aggressive marketing. Which
I mean,
apparently for an ebook isn't bad. Well, for a first one at least. I mean, you really need to build that audience. You need to go out there and whore yourself. And I'm going to, at some point, have to buy, I don't know, probably another 10, 15 author copies, mind you, and send them off to people that do reviews. So there's more money investment. And pretty much everything I've already made on it is going to go immediately into trying to get the damn thing marketed so I can try and get more eyes on it. Because the whole point of writing a book is to try and get your story read because you like your story and you want to share it because you're a dork. At least I am.
Wait a minute. Okay, here's a question for you. Why is there an apostrophe?
Why is there apostrophe?
Yeah, shadows within. Shouldn't it be shadows within?
No.
Or shadows within?
No, because there's not multiple shadows. Shadow is within. Shadow is without. The apostrophe is where the I would go normally. That, and if you're looking for the phrase shadows within or shadows without, you're going to find 18,000 books that aren't mine. So in that way, it sets it apart slightly, but I don't know. I've had people ask about that before, and it's something I've considered modifying in future printings, but then it makes the title inaccurate.
Shadows within.
Yeah, shadow is within and shadow is without doesn't quite have the same ring.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of the executive decision kind of thing. Now, initially, I was going to release them as a kind of both books in one volume, but I spent way too much on the editing process, so I ended up deciding to split it into the two. My artist recently approached us on it and said, I really should consider doing some. It's kind of an insomnia shuffle. I'm suffering from insomnia, and you're welcome. Anyone's welcome to join if they want. I'm just ending up talking about the book because I have no other topics because I'm so fucking hyper focused on that lately. But yeah. What the hell was I saying? Oh yeah. Initially, it's just going to be Shadow's song for the two of them, but because I spent so damn much on the editing process, and I need to still be able to make back some money to do the damn marketing on it, I ended up just releasing it as the 2-volume set. that end, I would have had to charge more for the first book charge more in period at that point, because at least with a print book, you're paying by page count in terms of how much it actually costs to get printed. I mean, I'm with royalties and all this other stuff. I think it's like $2 a book on sales. I make very little. It's somewhere between like $1 and $2, whether it's ebook or the print book, because roughly half of the cost of roughly half the cost of in terms of what the list price is on the actual paperback. Roughly half of that is the actual printing costs for print on demand, which ain't fucking cheap apparently.
Nope.
I mean, if I had it my way, it'd be like $8. It wouldn't be 10. The whole 10 thing kind of bugs me a little bit. Recently, Jackie was talking about buying it. I'm like, no, you're a friend of the author. Screw that. I'll just PayPal me the cash and I'll send it to you at author's rate. And she got both books for about, I don't know, $12. I think it came out to after the shipping cost. Goddamn shipping cost was like $4 in and of itself. I'm like, man, really? That sucks. That's like the value. That's like if each book is roughly $4 to actually print the damn thing. That's like the value of an extra book just in shipping cost. That kind of sucked. So yeah, I mean, my cost for the damn things is like $4 a piece.
Yeah, well, I'll get the books eventually.
Yeah, well, if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. I mean, that's everybody's choice. I'm not necessarily sitting on people's throats saying buy. It's not my nature.
Well,
I just hope that people that do enjoy it,
Reading actual fiction will actually help me as a writer. So there you go.
Well, it could. I don't know, but it's my fiction, so that might not help. You never know.
Wow.
Yeah, well, my method on this was it was odd. Seeing as I technically wrote the book 3 times, or wait, no, technically more than that. The first write through, I wrote it from the brother's perspective. And then partway through that, I'm like, I don't really like this. So I switched to her perspective, the sister's perspective. And then I started rewriting it. And there were some sequences from the first ones that, due to the nature of the character, I was able to incorporate back in. Now, the first one wasn't even a true POV piece, because while it was predominantly from the brother's perspective, I also did have other areas where it would break to include the perspectives from other characters. And frankly, in the narrative format that it was in, it didn't completely work, which was part of why I did the rewrite. But I found a way to rework some of those sequences back in there. Unfortunately, there are some that just couldn't be due to the nature of some of the characters involved. There's a character that's immune to the varied forms of the mystic arts. So any scene that was from his point of view, I had to just throw out completely. There was no way to reincorporate that because of the way that she was basically viewing things outside of her own mind, using her telepathic abilities. There was no way to incorporate those scenes, so they're just kind of lost on the cutting room floor. Nothing I can do about them. But after getting really frustrated, because I went out and I tried doing some, the writers' workshops and this kind of stuff, and they started pissing me off. So I'm like, okay, fine, I will change the entire layout of this damn thing. And I wrote like 2 or 3 chapters or whatever to put up there to basically see if their criticisms were valid. Or if it was just this weird, like, camp thing. And it turned out that that's pretty much what it is, because you could sit there and you'd go, and it's one of these things. You sit there, you go, you look over somebody's piece, you comment on it, and then they come over and, as kind of a gratuity, I guess, they come over and take a look at something that you've written and give a little bit of review on that. And what I was finding is you'd go out, and a lot of these people have been on there doing this stuff for a while, and you go out, you look at their stuff, and you try to give them an honest critique and a little bit of honest criticism. And then you have these people that have been following them for a while that are these weird loyal followers that will come over and just shit all over you for criticizing their friend.
Yeah, like I wanted to ask you, why you think that some of the professional writers, whether on TV shows or movies, come up with dog shit. Is it just because they're doing it for a paycheck, or? I suppose.
Okay, there's a couple things there. When you look at the ideas that you have and stuff that you've worked on, whether it be art, writing, or what have you, and you kind of you work on this stuff and you believe it at the time or what have you, And sometimes you step back and look at it a little while later and give it some time to gel and say, is this actually good or not? Well, when you're at the point that it's going to sell regardless and your fans are going to sit there and go out and buy it anyway, you don't have that pressure to improve yourself. You don't have that pressure to, listen to your critics and listen to your editors and what have you. At that point, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to actually cite Stephen King as an example in this. When he was working on, oh God, no, not Talisman, The Stand. When he first went to have that thing printed, that thing was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was like 12 to 1,400 pages. And by the time it went to print, it was about 600 to 800, somewhere in and around there, because his editor said, okay, all this stuff here you don't fucking need, and cut the book roughly in half.
Well,
And
no,
then,
from what I remember, the Stand was actually 1,200 pages.
Yeah, it was something like that, yeah. And it was cut roughly in half. I think it was actually 800 when it went to print. But yeah, he cut out, I think it was like 400 to 600 pages the first time around because the editor said, nope, no good, hack, 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 hack. Well, this always was kind of a burr under his saddle, so to speak, or a bee in his bonnet. And it bothered him. So when he got famous enough that he could do whatever the fuck he wanted and didn't have to listen to editors anymore, he had all those pages reinstated, the pages that his editor said, these are unnecessary to your story, you don't need them, cut them out. He just threw them back in there because he could. Now, realistically, speaking of realistically, here comes Nihilist. But realistically, those pages weren't needed. It's almost like there's two stories within that book, and it could have been more easily split into two totally different books. And probably should have been, because you had the whole build up as to where the rest of humanity went and basically getting rid of half the human race. And then you get into the actual aftermath story. And these could have and probably should have been two books and would have been more publishable as such.
Or not.
But instead of sitting there and saying, okay, we're going to break it up this way, or we're going to try to find a way to make this work, you get famous and you throw it in there because at that point, the editors have really no power or control over the process because you're a big enough name that you can write dog shit and they will still publish it. Things like Tommyknockers, for example, which was abject horseshit. That was a terrible book. Almost all the King fans I know that have kind of seem to agree that Tommyknockers was where he not only went off the rails, but took a big shit on the book before having it published. It was fucking bad.
I saw that on a Star Trek critic review of the movie Tommyknockers, and it's an interesting idea, I gotta admit.
The book was worse. It was all over the place. It felt almost like he had 15,000 ideas and decided to just chuck them into one book while doing fan service every chapter. I mean, there was almost something in every chapter. It's like, they saw Plymouth Fury driving down the road on their way back from buying batteries. Oh, and they saw a clown standing by the side of the road, too, holding some balloons. It was weird. Huh?
Wait, hold on. He actually. Well, I mean, I know that that Stephen King's universe is connected, so Pennywise pretty much exists.
Yeah,
everywhere.
but there was at one point some of the characters went to get batteries, and they drove by Pennywise on the way back. And there was another case where they talked about somebody almost being knocked, almost driving off the road while passing by this town called Salem's Lot. And then there was another reference to Christine in there. There was a reference to the Dead Zone, and the one to the Dead Zone I think was the most egregious, because there was this kid that was trying to do a magic act that had nothing to do with the story, that had disappeared like a decade earlier, that just happened to have been in the same hospital as a character from the Dead Zone at one point in their life. And this is told through a narrative of the father talking about an old branch that was on a tree that had been hit by lightning years earlier, that now is just a knothole, and he spends like 6 pages describing this shit. That has nothing to do with the fucking narrative. Nothing at all. Why is it in there? Because he doesn't have to listen to his editors anymore.
Speaking of the Dead Zone, I really loved the series.
But yeah, it's just all these things that he kind of threw in there for his old dedicated readers, winks and nods pertaining to other books, and all of it unnecessary. And some of it wasn't that bad. Some was just like, one little line reference. It's like, there's a throwaway. But when you're doing 6 pages talking about a branch on a tree that no longer exists because it was hit by lightning about a decade ago, around the time that their boy disappeared while doing a magic trick, a same boy that ended up in and another kid ended up in a coma and ended up in the same hospital as the guy from Dead Zone. What does this have to do with aliens landing somewhere and digging up a fucking ship? Ugh, nothing.
But the one thing I found interesting is that in the 90s, back when there was a school shooting, apparently, I forget which one it was. Apparently the shooter read his book and he's like, no, you know what? Because of this, no more printing.
Yeah.
That's retarded.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things looking back at this because, mind you, in my books, I spent 10 years writing them, and a lot of the stuff I kind of look back at, and I look at the original manuscripts, and I'm like, yep, that's in there. There are certain things in there that, had I published it back then, it would have been seen today as being almost prophetic. For example, there is actually a married couple that are lesbians in my story. Now, granted, they're married as lesbians, but in their particular case, they're not actually doge mère, which is the term that's used in the book for people that have same-sex unions. These two characters had to do this to hide from a government that was after them to make sure they weren't attacked. That has to do with stupid bloodline side plots.
I don't know. I think I think to ban something just because a shooter or a criminal enjoyed it is just stupid.
I don't know. There's also a school shooting in the story too, and this is before they became in vogue. And I'm almost concerned that people that read it now will think that that was an influence, but it was just a random scene that I wrote back in. God, what was it? 96, I think. 97 was when that part was written.
Yeah, but Shadow, I don't think Stephen King, to consider that there were literally thousands of people who read the same book and they didn't do what the
Oh,
kid
no.
did.
Unstable people will do unstable things. I don't think that what they listen to or what they read is necessarily a factor.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's just there's a lot of people out there who need to ban, we need to ban video games, we need to ban.
Well, dude, there's much
movies.
worse. There was, and I don't remember which book it was. I think it was. I know I'm going to say the wrong author, so I'm just going to skip it. But there was a book written ages ago that was written about a serial killer, and then somebody actually started committing crimes similar to those in the books, so they ended up calling in the author to question them about it. It happens,
No, I know.
Sometimes people get ideas from shit.
Yeah, but people get ideas from everywhere. People get ideas from looking at their dog, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, but that's not a reason to simply condemn an entire source of media. That I agree with.
Yeah, that's.
Which I think is where you're going with this, and I certainly fucking agree with you on that. But I mean, if somebody decided let's look at the flip side of it. And when I say flip, I mean it a little bit more literally. Let's look at the old Star Trek communicators. With some of the cell phone technology and what have you. How much of an inspiration was that? But we don't tend to talk about the positive inspiration, only the negative.
Yeah, it's just. You're right. We only do talk about the negative. People, with the advent of virtual reality, people already, dredging out the same old arguments they have with video games. I mean, granted, virtual reality may be a little different with the senses, but not really when you consider it's just video games, but for the head. I phrased that poorly, but you know what I mean.
There's always going to be people out there that have issues, and they're going to do things because they have issues. And I don't know. I feel like blame's too easily thrown around randomly. As a culture, we kind of have this need when something goes awry to find someone or something to blame, and usually it's not only inaccurate, but really kind of like desperation almost. We need to
you know,
find something to blame for this. It can't just be that
it solves
someone was
nothing.
fucked up.
It just breeds confusion. It breeds. I fucking hate it.
Yeah, it's kind of shit. Yeah. Well, let me fix that screen actually. There are two folks in here anyway. Incidentally, we have all of what 2 fucking people out there going to sleep to the sound of my voice apparently. But if there were somebody that wanted to join, they're welcome to do so. Let me just grab my new screen region to fix this. I mean, I have no illusions of necessarily entertaining people at this point. It's more a matter of trying to help bore people to sleep or lull them to sleep at least. Hell, I can keep talking about the book and just fucking brainwash them, right? Ha 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 ha.
I mean, I've read about serial killers throughout my life, and what they did, what a lot of what they did filled me with more of disgust rather than, yeah, I want to do that. I'm like, no, I don't want to be Ted Bundy or fucking Jeffrey Dahmer.
I don't know. Yeah, I think that those books are more of a checklist of how to do it wrong.
I mean, I guess they got caught, so of course.
Yeah. Hey. Well, seeing as it's usually not about, the serial killer, it's about catching the serial killer typically.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wrote something straight up from the serial killer's perspective, I don't know that you'd get it published. Matter of fact, I think it's more so that I don't know that you'd get any readers other than maybe somebody in some psychiatry class.
Well, I would disagree with that, but yeah. Because,
Well,
we've all
okay.
reached United points.
A few people reading it's one thing. I don't think it'd be that widespread. I think in terms of marketability, that you'd get shut down by most publishing houses would have to be self-pubbed, and the self-marketing would be really hard to do. Yeah, hell, it's hard enough for me, and yeah, it's a thing.
I mean, isn't there a story, that Telltale Heart, that sort of deals with that, and it's a beloved classic?
Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, so it's a beloved classic. It deals from his point of view.
But it's about him being caught, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because he was a fucking idiot and he gave in to paranoia.
But that's the whole thing, is that these stories are... You don't have the story about, the serial killer getting away generally. Now, Hannibal might kind of be an exception, but even Hannibal was caught.
I mean, what about Dexter? He escaped.
I keep hearing that name, which I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, never mind. I guess you never saw it.
No, I never did, and that's kind of... Yeah, I've heard it referenced a few times, but I've never actually seen it.
Well, then, never mind.
It's okay. That's kind of the downside of my particular writing process, is that I, after a while, started realizing that very different things that I'd read or seen or what have you would influence my writing to the point that I stopped reading, and a lot of times I'll avoid watching movies unless they're distinctly horrible. This is why my pattern with watching shows, with binge watching these days, is deliberately bad anime. The stuff that is written so poorly, or the dialogue is so crap, that it pisses me off to the point that it inspires good writing.
I mean, I would argue that good anime also inspires good writing.
Not for me. In my particular case, it just... I don't know. It inspires more replication than actual good writing.
It could inspire people to write. Let me rephrase.
It can, yeah, certainly. Now, in my particular case, if something's too good of an idea, I'm like, if I were to do this, I would do X, Y, and Z, and that almost encourages a level of borrowing from that media. And I tried damn hard to borrow from their media, from other people's stuff.
I think you missed a joke.
Oh, I heard your joke. I heard the joke.
Never mind.
Borrowing from their worldview, I did hear it. I just tried to talk over it.
I apologize.
That's okay, man. Yeah, it's certainly a meme in our community. Good grief. I had somebody try to kind of go that direction earlier. I was Xbox actually held a hangout. The first one he's done in ages. Did that earlier. That was kind of fun.
I was in there a bit, if you remember.
Yeah, Xbox is one of my favorites on here. But yeah, so when we were in there, we had this one guy come in, Hillbilly, isn't it? Was it Hillbilly?
You mean Christian Hillbilly?
Yeah.
Holy shit, Christian Hillbilly came in there?
Yeah.
Oh, earlier in the Xbox's thing,
Yeah. Just for a
Ooh,
couple of
that's
seconds.
creepy.
he
He
popped in, very condescending. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
of course.
he came in and we were talking about, stuff that he wasn't interested in talking about. So of course he's going to try and take over the conversation, and that's all fine and
Yeah.
good,
Steve
I
McRae actually
suppose.
mentioned him on because Skylar Fiction had another talk with Transgender Reality, and apparently Christian Hillbilly was on a sock, which Steve knew about. So he's like, "Fuck you, Christian Hillbilly," and Transgender Reality said he has literal brain damage, which I believe, but
Which does
doesn't
not excuse
excuse
his actions. I
exactly.
have literal brain damage, and if I'm being a douche, I expect people to tell me I'm being a douche.
But see, you're likable. He isn't.
I don't know. The next stroke, 2 or 3 more down the road, you never know who the fuck I'll be. So, because I've already had some personality shifts with it. So if I become a douche at some point after one of these strokes, I expect people to let me know I'm being a douche.
I
Then I
mean,
can try and course correct.
as long as you don't become an obnoxious theist.
I don't know, man. But regardless. So he goes in there and he's trying to talk over everyone. So I muted him for what was like, for basically, I think it was like 3 or 4 more words I was trying to get out there to finish my sentence. And, oh, you muted me. I'm leaving because you don't want an honest conversation, I'm assuming was his viewpoint. And I'm just like, dude, I want to finish my fucking sentence because you're sitting here throwing out irrelevancies.
He hasn't changed at all. I mean, frankly, he can't given his brain damage. But
Well, I mean,
that's
he
really
comes in there and
it's not
starts
an
like,
excuse.
I've done a lot of teaching. I've taught everywhere from, what was it? It was like kindergarten all the way through high
He's
school, and
still.
I know all this stuff about science and math and yada yada yada. I'm like,
Uh,
okay, and so I'm like, okay, so you actually understand up to that grade level. So if I were to say something like, well, what is the current estimate that we have about how many exoplanets there are in the Milky Way? You wouldn't have an answer because that's beyond your purview. And then he started talking over me, trying to pull that precept, how do you know shit?
I mean,
Well, where does your knowledge come from?
look,
I
Jesus
talk
is
to
Lord.
people.
It says the same thing. Southern Israelite apparently does the same thing. I need to go back and watch the debate Reds had
Oh my God, it
tonight
was
with.
painful. Okay,
I know.
after the first like hour and 16 minutes, it descends into anarchy. It's just maddening. It's hilarious.
I didn't watch.
I did send a message to Red though, telling him that I thought that he lost the debate.
Are you trolling?
Well, if the debate was about who has a better vocabulary, Red clearly lost.
Fair enough.
But I don't think that's what it was about. But the way that that first half struck me was that I blanked out his name, Israelite, that he was trying to basically make himself sound more intelligent by using better vocabulary than Red, as opposed to actually putting a legitimate argument out there.
I mean, that's ironic. He actually mentioned Dunning-Kruger once.
Mm-hmm. But this is kind of the thing, is when listening to somebody speak, part of how we gauge them in terms of how intelligent we think they are is based upon their word usage and their word choice.
Yeah, no, that's true. Peer review and I actually talked about this like once.
So you can kind of set yourself up as being more of an authority figure, or being more intelligent than your opponent just by having a better vocabulary. Just by using
people
better
think I'm
words.
incompetent because of the way I speak.
But yeah. Well, I mean, okay. No, I'm not going to use that example. That's a really bad one. But yeah, I've actually spoken to people before in terms of, if you basically read more, if you spend some time going through, like the dictionary and just try to improve your vocabulary, people will judge you better than they currently do. Hell, if you have a good enough vocabulary, you could be an absolute fucking imbecile and people will think you're brilliant.
Well, I mean, I think part of my problem is that the stuttering doesn't help.
No, it doesn't. And unfortunately, you're going to get judged for that too.
Yep.
Now, granted, I'm always wanting to give you a hard time over one of your, we'll just call it one of your linguistic anomalies. And I think that's a little bit of kindness, and that's that you get frustrated and give up too quick. So instead of sitting there and taking that step back and saying, okay, hang on, give me 1 second, collecting yourself and trying again, a lot of time you just say, fuck it. And it's like, no, what were you trying to say?
The reason, I think the reason why that is because I deal with people who don't give me the time in real life. So, I'm kind of programmed to be like, you know what? Fuck it. I don't want to talk to you people. It's just, you know what I mean?
No, dude, I get that impulse, but there are those times that it's like, no, not fuck it. What do you say? And you've seen me a few times trying to rein you in and go, no, just try again. Let's just do this.
Yep.
But I understand that most people, A, lack the patience, and B, don't really give much of a shit, frankly.
Yeah.
They're just waiting to grab the mic, like, Hillbilly earlier, for example. I mean, if you're going to get upset that you were muted so somebody could finish one sentence, enough that you're going to run away from the conversation, or run out of the room, rather, I'm going to have a hard time respecting you, just for starters. Not that he's necessarily worthy of any to begin with. But his whole thing was to come in there and trying and introduce himself in such ways to present himself as an authority.
Yeah. I hate people like that.
Yeah, fat chance of that happening.
No. But yeah, I'd actually just a couple days earlier been talking to somebody who does study exoplanets, and the actual answer to the current low-end estimate was fascinating because we're talking a low-end estimate of 2 trillion planets just in the Milky Way.
I mean, that makes sense.
Fucking amazing when you think about it. Try to wrap your head around that one, especially when they start talking about how unlikely it is for life to arise. I think it'd be much more unlikely for it not to.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like people, not to go into a religious debate, I'm just gonna bring them up. Theists like to think, that that life on this planet is so miraculous and that couldn't have happened elsewhere. How the fuck do you know?
Well, I mean, the thing is, with roughly 2 trillion planets out there and all these different stars, and that's just the Milky Way. I mean, statistically, you'd think there would have to be life somewhere. Now, getting to our level of development's a slightly different matter, but statistically, even then, it's likely it would happen somewhere. And where is the argument about the rarity of life happening? Someplace where that's happened. It could have been here, it could have been anywhere. Now, if you pick one individual planet and say, what's the likelihood of it arising here? You're going to end up with it being very unlikely. But at the same point, if it's somewhere, well, then it's very likely. And only in those somewheres will this conversation occur.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a matter of how you look at it. It's perspective, man.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think a friend of mine said that when we talk about aliens, we are assuming that the same elements that are on Earth or elsewhere. At least I think that's what he said. I may be misremembering, but I'm like,
Well, strictly speaking, they are. They're deep space for that matter. I mean, a lot, oxygen. We have oxygen on the fucking moon in the soil along with water. I mean, all we need to do is create the apparatus and send it up there so they can actually extract it.
but from what little I do know, a lot of the elements that are on Earth are on other planets. Like,
we found them.
you know what I mean?
There are other planets that are very similar to Earth in composition from what we found so far. Some of them super planets even.
Like, I could be misremembering because my memory is so bad. Probably worse than yours.
Fair.
But yeah. Like I said, I could be misremembering, but whenever he says that, I'm like, you know what? Not even worth arguing about.
Yeah, I kind of get that to a point, but I mean, the thing that it gets me about it is, they talk about just, let's say, the life starting on Earth. Well, we have how many deep sea underwater volcanic vents? We have how many mud volcanoes? We have how many environments, little microenvironments on Earth where the first molecules, where these proteins could form, where life could have potentially started. And they make it seem like there's this one point where it had to have happened as opposed to anywhere across the surface of the Earth.
That's
over the course of, what was it? How long did it take life? Like a couple,
hang on,
bi-
hang on, hang on. I'll tell you. Let's see.
like
The
4
first
point
son of
something billion
life.
years or something?
Well, no, no, no. Hang on, hang on. The first son of life was discovered to have occurred 3.8 billion years ago. So our solar system is 4.5 billion years. So give or take 700 million years
Mm-hmm.
for life to happen on Earth.
Yes.
Okay.
So about 700 million years for the first proto-life.
Yes, but you know what I watched this documentary on on YouTube about the relationship between minerals and life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, minerals are fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It's I don't know. Like,
But I
I
mean,
gotta
that's the
watch
kind
it
of thing,
again.
is they make it seem like you're looking at this one point on Earth, and this is the point where life evolved. So, or first started, so to speak. So life must have started in that one point. There isn't any other point it could have started at, and it wasn't all these years. It's like it had to start at this point in this. I don't get why they look at it like that, but that seems
Well,
to be the way they
yeah,
frame
I
it.
don't know either. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. From what I remember, they actually did two studies. It was the first one was the famous one that theists always misrepresent, the Miller one. You know
Hmm.
which one I mean.
Yeah,
And then
Miliuri.
yeah, and then there's another one. He used. I gotta send you that video. I gotta watch it more than remember. But they did. That's I was looking at something moving. I know you're doing that, but
Yeah, ignore me.
they
I'm putting a little bar up
yeah,
here.
but they did an experiment, using pressure, what I mean, to simulate, the volcanic vents. You know what I mean? Because life obviously is risen there. Like the first time they did the experiment, nothing happened. But once they added minerals, amino acids. So
Yeah,
life could have occurred in two places at once, or you know what I mean?
numerous. Yeah.
Like there wasn't a whole primordial soup that that
It wasn't like there was one pinprick where life could have initially arisen. There were numerous different places.
yeah
And it's not just underwater vents, it's mud volcanoes as well. That's another one.
But
yeah
all life started
volcanoes.
in this 3 foot wide gun. No, sometimes I like to think, I don't know how scientific this is, but like, like you have, the oceans filled with all these chemicals and stuff. And
Well, no, I mean that's
life could have been, I mean, the beginnings of life could have been happening all across the planet in this ocean.
well, yeah, that's
We just-
but that's what the Miller experiment showed. Like, you know what I mean? They boiled some water. The water created like there's like a cycle thing. They boiled water, which turned to liquid, which went back. But then when they added electricity to it, that's when the magic happened. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's
Yeah,
the, you know,
yeah, you had
that's what
chemicals starting to
realized.
bond and react with one another.
Yeah. It was just so awesome. But of course, again, theists always fucking misrepresented. I mean, the guy who wrote A Case for a Creator misrepresent the
Oh,
hell out of
Lee
it.
Strobel, what a piece of work he is.
Uh,
And yes, I diverted and went from shit to work real quick there.
oh, I used to be an atheist when I was younger. I'm like, no, you weren't.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure by default you could make that argument at some point in his existence, maybe? I don't know.
Well, he could may well have been because I used to be a Christian. Shit happens. You could be one thing and become something else.
People do change their opinions, most certainly. But in his particular case, when he's like, I'm going to analyze this critically and I'm going to give this. No, 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 you're not. Okay, when you're
Yeah,
sitting there wanting to understand the creation of the universe and you talk to William fucking Lane Craig as your authority, there's something wrong right out the gate.
Bingo.
yeah. Also, I remember him covering that certain event that happened. What was it, in Virginia or something? They wanted to ban books from a school.
It happens all the time.
No, I know, but he actually covered this because he was a journalist. He covered this. It was in Virginia or something. He mentioned it in his book, Case for a Creator. I gotta finish reading that book.
He
So
wrote
much to do.
one article that he got praise for. That's pretty much it. He was never much of a journalist, frankly.
Well, journalist, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I find it so interesting. I find the origin of life so interesting. And these people, Ronnie and all the other people, just intelligent design, guys. I'm like, you people are so stupid. No, if it was intelligent designed, why the fuck is the brain designed so poorly, and the human body in
Oh, tell
general?
me about it. Good grief. Yeah, I actually decided to grab my little speech bar from the internal here and mirror it on the stream, and I'm getting weird fucking side effects. I think I like it. We have to try to remember how I did that.
Nice.
Looks all kinds of weird.
Well, it isn't one of the excuses they try to come up with is why things are not perfect now. It's because of the fall.
Oh, of course, it's
Oh,
all
I
blamed on the
fucking hate
fall.
it.
Before the
hate it when
fall,
they do that.
everything was perfect, but when Adam and Eve ate that damn apple,
All
the
those,
entire universe changed at a molecular level.
oh yeah, their genome resequenced. It was perfect prior to that. They would have lived forever. Of course, it could be worse because the New Agers claim that. Oh, the worst is the Christian New Ager views of it when they claim that around the time of Noah's Ark or what have you, that aliens came down and introduced this new genome or somewhere. Oh God, they come up with some weird shit, man.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so they believe that through some kind of weird transcendental horseshit and channeling that they can restore their genome to the original alien genome that tried to
Oh,
improve humanity or some shit.
honestly, there's nothing worse. Like today I was watching, I was watching the beginning, the non sequitur show, like, the stream where Skylar talked to, transgender reality. But before that, they had Godless Engineer talking about the Shroud of
Turn.
yes, thank you, the Shroud of Turin, and they mentioned that there was this guy, there's these people who like to say, oh, a black hole opened up, it sucks. I forget but what the fuck, black holes?
With the shit that I've read, I wouldn't be surprised by any fucking thing at this point. I mean, some of the hell,
Like
I
there's
actually did a
so many.
breakdown of that stupid history thing by Spirit Science.
Oh
And
god.
I got to point out something about that, though, because there's a reason why I never completed the second part of it. Because I was sitting there going around, and you're going after the beliefs of Spirit Science and all of his claims and this kind of stuff, and then you find one of his little blog pages where he's saying that he doesn't even believe some of that anymore, but he won't specify what. At that point, it's like, so
Okay.
you don't even endorse your own fucking content. Why am I giving you any time?
Yeah, Cool Hard Logic has done a lot of good videos on him. It's, you know,
There's a reason why I started going after the core tenets of his nonsense first, and but after a while, I'm like, I'm just tired of wasting my time with this because I might have made a little bit of impact with a couple people, but the folks that were coming along, it's like I was getting people that were coming to my channel to comment. And these people were saying, well, Spirit Science is wrong, but the truth is, and then throw out some other bullshit, ridiculous dogma. Because they were determined to believe whatever the hell they wanted to believe, and it didn't matter what you presented. I mean, I even went so far as to do that video, which incidentally Jade did help me with, in which we were going through varied studies and showing how there were certain interactions with the vagus nerve that could be stimulated through meditation and this kind of stuff. So there could be some actual legitimate benefits to stimulating it and how it corresponds with some of the chakra positions. Now, is the general chakra thing horseshit? Yeah. Is the modern implementation of it horseshit? But is there some potential benefit to some of the meditations and what have you? And yeah, there is. There actually fucking is. There's some actual evidence of that. But they're taking this to say, well, yeah, but you're sitting there doubting the chakras, and the chakras are the way that we say they are, even though you're showing that the science that we're claiming is wrong. The fucking dissonance there is to the point that it's like, why am I bothering?
Yeah, right. Oh.
Well, of course he's wrong, but I'm right with my bullshit. And the ancients knew more than we know today. And if we could... Oh, come on. Fucking come on. Basically what I was able to show, or at least what I feel like I was able to show, is that back in the day when they were sitting there and basically cutting people the fuck open, whether it be after injury or what have you, saying, gee, what's this? What's that? Let's assign all these weird notions to it that really don't connect with reality. And it's not like they're going to update any kind of model based on a modern understanding, so they still think that the sugar in your blood is controlled by your nuts. No, that's not how it works. Are they going to update their charts? No, they're going to stick with their own stupid dogma because, heaven forbid we try to make it actually, kind of bend it just a wee bit, we'll say, so it comports a little bit with reality. That'd be a start. So even if there were some truth to their claims, it'd be nice if they actually incorporated some actual medical knowledge, some actual biological knowledge to their fucked up model. But they have no interest in that because as far as they're concerned, people thousands of years ago that didn't have the equipment, that didn't have the knowledge that we had now that pulled shit out of their fucking ass, they were right. Yeah. Keep talking out of your brown chakra, There is no brown chakra. There is now. You're talking out of it, fucker. Anyway. Yeah, it's kind of a thing. Do we have anyone still watching? Hey, we have 3 people. Vincent, you still out there? How you doing, man?
I don't know. I should probably go to sleep. It's like 4.
Well, dude, if you can fucking do it. I figured I'd be probably sitting here just like, I don't know, working on chapter 3 and futzing around or whatnot. I didn't expect anyone to actually join, so surprised some folks did. Especially Heavy, he was on it. Holy crap! I mean, when I fucked up and started broadcasting to the old 13 heathens, I was like, "Holy fuck! Somebody saw that! Someone's still looking! Wow!"
Yeah, I've been up maybe about 5 minutes just browsing the internet, trying to go back to sleep. I wake up at odd hours sometimes.
Yeah, tell me about it. I have the same fucking problem. Then again, I sleep at odd hours too.
Yeah, at least I don't, being retired, I don't have to worry about going into work or anything. So screw it.
True that. Very true. Granted, in my case, it's disability, not retirement. Granted, I'm old enough that I damn near could be anyway. Oh, wait, we got someone. Let me get over here. Dress the legend. And accept. There we go.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I sit around here bored out of my skull half the fucking time, which is, I think, part of why it got so hard to work on things like the writing and what have you. I literally had nothing else to do with my time, so.
I'm not tired. I mean, I know this insomnia, but it's like your body gets tired, doesn't it, during insomnia?
Sometimes sometimes on a physiological level, I'm wide awake and my mind is exhausted, and usually that ends up with me just laying down and trying to go to sleep, or it reverses and I'm physically and mentally fatigued and I just can't fucking sleep because I've gone past this weird, like, invisible barrier at which your body just says, nope, 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 you're awake, fuck you.
Hey, Druss, how you doing?
Yeah, now that I've shut up for a minute, how you doing, Druss? Ow. Let me fix the screen up.
Sorry, putting my kettle on being British and it being the morning.
Yeah, it's actually a reasonable hour for you, isn't it? Let me fix my screen cap.
As opposed to 3:45 or so, or 1:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
1:45 insane, yes.
Shadow, I'm gonna go since now you have like 2 people.
That's fine, man. Whether anyone's here or not, I'm probably gonna keep going because, yeah, as I said, I'll just work on the damn book if nothing else and bore people on the external. There we go. We have a screen region again. Let me get that up here.
Good night.
Good night. Try to sleep.
Yep. Bye.
I'd say sleep well, but I've never had faith in anyone actually being able to fall asleep at this point.
Good night.
I'm not made for faith.
Well, it's weird. I mean, I suffered, and I didn't realise I suffered from sleep apnea for years.
Oh man, yeah.
And I went to, eventually sort of, you know, I knew something was wrong, and they kept giving me sleeping tablets and antidepressants and this and that and the other. And it wasn't until I actually met someone with sleep apnea, and I was sort of, and he actually, because I had a problem, I could fall asleep anywhere. I've always had that ability, you know, ever since I've been a kid. You know, I can fall asleep in the back of the car, fall asleep on the plane, you know, doesn't matter. But the trouble is, I wasn't being able to stop myself falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
But not at night when you want to sleep. It's like during the day because you haven't got any sleep during the night. And it wasn't until I actually met someone who had sleep apnea, and they sort of asked me 3 basic questions. Said, you find you wake up in the night and go for a pee? And I said, yeah. You have sort of like a really dry, sticky mouth in the morning? I went, sometimes, yeah. Said, you feel tired all the time? I went, yeah. He said, yeah, go and get a sleep test.
Mine's actually, yeah, mine's gotten better with age, but yeah, I definitely fucking know where you're coming with that shit. Now, granted, part of how I became aware of it was it used to freak my wife the hell out, and I'd just stop breathing, and she'd just start shaking me to make sure I was still alive. And after a while, I apparently on some subconscious level started noticing. I don't know.
But it's like you get into that weird thing where you're kind of not asleep, but you're not really awake, and you're still thinking.
And you're not quite aware enough for it to be sleep paralysis either.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really, really strange. And you know, when I eventually got diagnosed, I went to a sleep clinic, and in my worst hour, I was waking up about 20 times an hour.
Shit, that's a lot worse than I ever was. Christ.
And they reckon I had it for about 10 years, and the doctor doubted I had any REM sleep in that time, because there wasn't enough time for me to get into my deep sleep cycle.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the other thing that was really weird is I didn't have a memory. When towards the end of the memory just was shot. I couldn't remember anything.
Yeah, you end up fluff-headed. There's something about the REM cycle that seems to kind of reset parts of the brain. That's just a vague analogy, but
you know, I mean, I actually get, you know, the company I work for think I have the most amazing memory ever because I sleep.
Yeah,
so,
sleep,
so I'm
novel
a
concept.
bit of a shouty champion about sleep apnea because it totally fucked my life up. It cost me my marriage.
That sucks.
Well, you know, I mean, I wasn't very happy. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was absolutely shit scared. I sort of pulled back and withdrew from everything. I didn't remember anything. You know, loads of other things weren't very important. Yeah, and it was the difference between it was actually like waking up when I started, you know, getting proper treatment for it.
Interesting. I don't know. I mean, I find that in terms of the whole notion of basically a reset switch or what have you, when I'm working on their books or what have you, I'll get into this groove, and I know damn right well if I lay down or try to go to sleep that I'm going to lose it. But then if I stay up working on it too long, I get fucking slap happy and things stop making any sense.
And once you get to a certain point, an all-nighter is inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Or, as I said, you know, but you still hit this point at which you become almost slap happy because you've been up too fucking long, and then nothing's going to actually come out right anyway. You're going to go back the next day and going, what did I do?
I try and make sure that I've got, you know, sort of like 5 or 6 hours of sleep and what's right for me. So I just try and make sure I'm in bed for enough time to do that, even if I'm not feeling that sleepy. I'll just go and watch some crap. What I tend to find is watching history documentaries is something I fall asleep to quite a lot.
I know there's a whole set of YouTubers I'm really good at falling asleep to.
Well, there's a whole load of lectures from the Oriental, what is it? The Oriental Institute.
Hmm.
And they're really dry, hour and a half long, you know, old-fashioned university lectures, which is the type of, you know, that's the type of sort of stuff I like, because there's no fluff, there's no marketing, there's no pizzazz. It's just, this is the presentation of my findings and what I've seen.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's very soporific in the right
And
sense.
as long as it's a topic you're interested in, you don't have to worry about having that weird brainwashing quality while you're asleep.
Yeah.
I've fallen asleep to some weird ass shit and ended up waking up from dreams that I'm just like, okay, I'm never watching that again.
I always like a bit of cheese before bedtime. Sorry, Heavy.
Oh, no, I just want to say I've heard some people really enjoy watching Nephilim Free videos when they can't sleep because his voice puts them to sleep.
I don't know. With him, I'd be worried about like strangling anyone nearby or something, you know.
Yeah.
Randomly waking up to throw stuff at the dog or something. I don't know.
Or pencils in my eyes. Or my ears.
I don't know. I used to listen to like videos and whatnot because something about his even tone that he keeps throughout would just lull me to sleep.
Mm.
Now the problem is that like post-stroke, it just overtaxes my brain, and I end up going to sleep in the wrong manner.
Well, I want to go ahead and try to sleep again.
Yeah, have a good one, Heavy. It was nice to have you, even if it was brief.
I appreciate it. Yeah, good. Yeah, maybe I'll
Take
get
care, dude.
hangouts and stuff. Y'all take care.
Yeah, take care, man. Good to see you.
Good night.
There we go. There's the noise.
Yeah, I'm currently training a load of people on Discord on how to deal with Darth Dawkins.
Oh boy, there's an interesting one there. Good grief.
So, well, I've come up with three basic sort of tactics they can sort of run down. One is just keep asking him if he's fallible.
Mm-hmm. He's still doing his obnoxious something, I assume.
Oh yeah. And if he says, you know, is it possible that an all-powerful blah-de-blah-de-blah can make me certain of blah-de-blah? The answer to that question, because that's the next thing he'll say after the fallible thing, is if you could demonstrate that to be true, then possibly.
Well, I don't know. I mean, one of the first pre-suppers I ever dealt with, and granted, I've now acknowledged this wasn't necessarily a great tactic. Back when I was 12, I ran a cult, little death cult kind of thing, and I kept asking them, you know, who was the person that was my second, so to speak, the one that did most of the recruitment for the cult? What was his name? If God can reveal things to you so you know them for certain, answer me that question. At which point the answer is, of course, well, that's not the way it works. Well, then what use is it? But yeah, it's not a great approach by any stretch of the imagination, but that was one of my first, when I first came across the argument, and I look back at it and say, wow, I didn't get it, did I?
And then my tactic with him, which again, this is one I've used a couple of times in the past, that does drive him nuts. Mm-hmm. Which is, you know, he talks about worldviews and how worldviews are incompatible. And my question to him, and it was just one of those, I'm a bit sort of like stoned one night, and I was chatting with him. And I said, Darth, how can you prove to me that you are meaningful in my worldview?
Interesting.
Because I decided I wasn't going to grant him shit.
I don't even like granting the notion of a worldview as being coherent. At this point, I mean, what really is a worldview? There's too much in it to try to isolate it to one thing, but they're trying to break down an entire worldview into one stance and one position, and that seems just ridiculous to me.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, it literally is, because nobody has one worldview. There is no axiomatic foundation that they base the entirety of their life on.
Yeah, it's not this huge freaking monolithic thing. It's just, you know, you have a way of seeing the world, and you have many lenses you use depending on what angle you're perceiving it from, essentially.
Well, it's also that, you know, personally, I think 90% are situationally emotional. You know, I don't think we think through a shitload of stuff.
That's sort
You
of
know, when I'm riding my bike to work, you know, yeah, I've got my active side, which is saying, okay, anything coming out of that street, is that car going to do something stupid? You know, am I going over the speed limit? My main problem. You know, all the sort of the autonomic stuff of, okay, I'm coming up to a roundabout, I'm going to position myself here. Now I'm going to go round the roundabout. Okay, you know, then I'm going to exit out and I'm going to start increasing to speed X. That's automatic. I don't even think about that.
yeah, you do the route long enough and you don't even think about it anymore. You just do.
Well,
you stop thinking.
it doesn't matter if I know the road or not. It's, you know, I mean, I've been riding bikes, you know, 38 years.
Yeah. Well, it's like me and driving. I mean, half the time I don't think of what I'm doing. Now, post-stroke, there have been a couple moments where, you know, I've kind of, I'll just say, lost myself a little bit, and then I'll have to make a conscious effort and think, okay, how do I drive? And I'll actually get confused for a moment.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's brain damage, but, you know, it's interesting how much of this is just muscle memory and things you do without even think about. And then once you think about it, it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Which side's the pedal on?
And well, that's my point. I mean, I think that, you know, an awful lot of human day-to-day activity is like that. It's not really, you know, you don't sit there and think about your presuppositions or, you know, an axiomatic foundation to your universe. That's not something that people actually fucking think about.
Well, I mean, stranger still, though, when they get into these arguments, you know, I mean... Okay, so unless you know, what about the laws of logic? Okay, what child knows the laws of logic yet they still apply them? You know, what child will sit there and make these kind of philosophical musings? They don't. Yet they function just fine in our reality. I mean, people that have never heard of the laws of logic still apply the basics, you know?
I also wish people would stop calling them laws, because they're not the principles of observation. You know, they don't actually exist. It just seems to be the fact that things, you know, our observations cohere, and they seem to be, you know, a set that fits those observations.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a, this is what we observe, so how are we going to make guidelines to fit what we observe? Yeah. Not the other way around.
Well, I accused Arthur at one point of being a Platonist. He doesn't like that either.
Yeah, I had, I don't know, I don't remember who it was, but I don't know if it was a hangout that I was in or just listening to, that somebody was sitting there saying that you'd have to borrow from the Christian worldview, well referencing Aristotelian logic.
Yeah.
So if the laws of logic as we know them now were basically developed by Aristotle, how is that not an Aristotelian worldview?
I like that.
I mean, it's been co-opted by Christianity, but ideally it's Aristotelian in its origin.
What did people do before Aristotle?
Yeah, you know, they used logic. Nobody had just tried to categorize it yet. Or it's conspiracy by the Freemasons. There's the other thing I can never quite get. Ah, man. I don't know.
So, where do you come from?
Texas. Hang on a second. Incidentally, we have 4 viewers. There should be a link in the description. Feel free to jump if you want. I've given my blurb. Okay. Yeah, I was originally born in the Northeast, but I moved down to Texas, goddamn, about 20 years ago, and somehow I'm still not a Texan. It doesn't matter how long you're here. If you're not born here, it doesn't count, apparently.
I know you're not a Freemason.
No. I know a couple, actually. My father-in-law is.
That's the first question you ask when greeting.
No,
you're supposed to say, I'm from the East.
Oh, okay.
Where are you traveling? What are you seeking?
But yeah,
there's 3 challenges.
But yeah, there's, I don't know, my father-in-law's a Freemason. One of my wife's coworkers used to be, and you'd hear these idiots going on like, what was it, like, level 37 Freemason, and it stops like a level or 2 below their claim, and they're like, no, they just don't know it. Okay, so they're part of a secret organization, and they've gotten just below what you're claiming are the top tiers of it, and they don't know that there's anyone above them? Where the fuck's your logic on this?
Yeah. Money goes somewhere.
Yeah, they don't fucking. Then there's what's the other one? The North Star or something like that, or Southern Star, or I don't remember. The female group. It's the female counterpart group, and both of them do a lot of charity work apparently.
Same as the Rotary Club here does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, it's just a rehash of the old mystery cults.
I don't know, man. It reminds me more of the Royal Order of Buffaloes, honestly, from the Flintstones.
Yeah. All that weird one that Mr. Cunningham used to belong to in Happy Days.
Oh, I don't recall.
They all used to wear fezzes.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I vaguely remember. Oh, my grandfather was actually a member of the Knights of Columbus. I think they might have done the Fez thing too at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that basic kind of thing. And, you know, it's like, oh, gee, there's this group, then they're a private club, essentially, you know, that you have to be invited to join. So therefore, we will make conspiracy theories about them. Because, you know, heaven forbid it just be a club. Hello, Shane. Rumors of me being human are greatly exaggerated, especially when I've been up this long. Somebody in the external.
I see. I'm watching it because I've got you highlighted.
Yeah, that's part of why I put it up here. This way, when I comment on the external, it's not completely out of the blue, just mostly out of the blue. Yeah, I actually kind of expected that I was just going to sit down and do another boring hangout of me working on the damn book, and I'm kind of glad it didn't turn out that way.
Well, you know, we're just trying to make sure you don't get any progress. It's a conspiracy.
Yeah, I'm good with that, you know. I don't know. At the point I'm at right now, it might be better that I'm not making any progress, quite frankly. This scene is going to be absolute misery, and I really need to get my brain in the right space for it. Complicated enough that I'm going to have to use Roll20 to actually set the stage so I can keep track of everything going on, because my brain ain't doing it these days.
Do you use flowcharts to write books, or do you just write?
A lot of time I just write, basically, but in this particular case, because there's so much involved, because, like I said, it's a big combat sequence coming up. I'm going to be using Roll20, which is an app used for running role-playing games and whatnot, so that I can actually have everything positioned around on the screen and keep track of how much damage the different people have taken. I'm going to have to write the scene as if I were running a role-playing game, just to stage it in my own head to make sure I don't lose track of anything, which is highly likely, honestly. I'm deliberately trying to bite off more than I can chew, is trying to force my brain back where it's supposed to be. Which I'll tell you is a little scary at times, because basically when I start pushing my brain too much, this is where you have your neurons trying to remap and reconnect. And sometimes they'll try reconnecting across these bridges of areas that are damaged, and I can feel it.
I've done quite a bit of work on role-playing games over the years. You know, I was part of the dev and playtest group for RuneQuest 2.
Oh, cool.
Done quite a lot of work. Yeah, well, RuneQuest 2 was just we tidied it up. We sort of fixed some of the problems. You know, the old, I've got to 120% in RuneQuest, and now I'm starting to become untouchable.
I don't know. I keep thinking back to some of the old classic pen and papers, the old tabletops, and some of those are just great.
Well, that's all. That's main. You know, that's the role playing I used to do, and then I got involved in developing an online world, but still pen and paper role playing, using Facebook and YouTube.
Actually, the books actually originally came. I don't want to say that they originally came out of a role-playing game, because that's not entirely accurate. I got years and years ago, I got a copy of, I think it was Star Frontiers or something like this. This ancient little, you know, space combat related game. Yeah, you remember it?
Oh yeah, I used to own it.
Yeah, not very well detailed, but yeah, I got that just as a way to entertain myself, and started creating kind of mythos and additional races and all this kind of stuff to kind of go along it. And then when I got introduced to proper role-playing games, I started converting all of my notes pertaining to that into a game to run for my friends, and my stories happen in the same universe. And a couple of years ago, I ran one online through YouTube and Google Hangouts, and then I discovered Roll20 and Game On. Roll20 is a fun little platform. And come October, I'm planning on starting a new campaign at some point. I'm just working, kind of ironing out. We need to do new character sheet iterations, among other things, but at some point in October, we're planning on starting that back up. I have to figure out what the new setting is.
If you're playing online and it's European friendly-ish, then I'm always up for a game.
Cool. I will try hitting you up when I figure out how we're going to, what the breakdown is going to be, because there's always a question about hours and this and that, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to do this time what I did last time, because last time the way that we kind of set it up was camp-based. So at the end of the campaign, the players would break and set up camp essentially, and then the next campaign would start, and you didn't need to have all the same players. It was a matter of who stayed behind and who went out on the adventure, and this way it could be more freeform. So that every adventure,
one of the other... Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the other things that I kind of got involved in is we created a living city, as I say, on YouTube and Facebook, and it was semi-DM-less as well, so you needed a dungeon master for scenes.
Oh, cool.
But we had like guidance and rules for what you were allowed to do within a scene and whether you needed a DM or not. So sort of social interaction scenes didn't need a dungeon master, but if they were, what we call plot impact scenes, then they did. So that means that you could do all your kind of fleshing character out, interaction, getting to know people. And it's all video, so people can then go and watch the interactions and what's going on.
That's a good approach.
And then we have metagaming rules. So just because you were able to watch something doesn't mean you can actually use any of that information, and that was the hardest thing to manage. But we had a good
it always is. It always is.
And it was all based around the old White Wolf vampire rules.
Oh yeah, vampire and werewolf both. The way that they detailed the system in terms of, here are the different groups that you can be part of and what have you, was absolutely phenomenal. One of the best out there. But their combat system was such shit.
We fixed it. I rewrote most of it.
You pretty much have to just to make it playable.
I did 280 pages worth of rules for that game. We actually,
not at all surprised, man.
And a complete background for it as well.
And the way they set up their world, though, was fucking great, though. It's just they needed rules to go with it.
Yeah, they sucked. I mean, there's a game system that I have used. I didn't change it for this because it wouldn't have worked online. But we wanted, because the nice thing about the White Wolf rules or Onyx Path rules is they are pretty simple. They're pretty enabled, and we do all the rolling on screen as well. So it's a random dice generator that you have in Hangouts. So if you do all the rolls, that was kind of cool. But
that's kind of how I got my start when I was doing the online thing. That's with Hangouts and rolling the dice in the Hangout and this kind of stuff. Was kind of how I started. But like I said, once I found Roll20 and was able to start doing the mapping and let people move their markers around, I was hooked on that.
Yeah. And yeah, the main thing that we did was fixing all the disciplines. So and again, I created like matrices. So for each discipline, there was a matrix between other disciplines and how other disciplines. So there's always this kind of. So what we did is we took out some of the Uber stuff, because for every instance there is a resolution.
Yeah.
So you have that basically already with things like obfuscate and auspex.
It's kind of an arms race after a point.
Yeah. So we kind of did that, and we changed how certain other things work. We changed how celerity worked, which was a way OTT power in the game.
I don't know. There was this one day that I had a bunch of friends trying to talk me into going to this Vampire the Masquerade LARP. And their whole thing was that they had a clan of people that were playing Malkavians. They played them way too straight, and they're like, okay, we want you to go and show them what a Malkavian should be like. And I'm like, are
Yeah.
you really sure about that? Because, yeah, I can play one, but I wasn't actually kicked out, much to my surprise, even though their whole little sign for obfuscate was that you cross your arms in front of you. And during this big meeting they were having, I crossed my arms in front of me and started skipping around the place, and people were like, hey, knock it off. And I'm like, can you see me? Fuck off. Until somebody finally grabbed me like, I can fucking see you. I'm like, okay, there we go, I'll stop now. Literally skipping around the place going, I'm obfuscated, fuck off, haha, you can't see me. I was the most obnoxious Malky ever.
I have to say, I always gravitated towards Gangrel, but
yeah, I like Gangrel too. What was it? I want to say Ventru. Okay, yeah, they were on some levels closer to my usual game style, which meant I kind of avoided them. I kind of preferred the Gangrel and the Bruja.
Yeah, Bruja. Look, and the other ones I quite like playing Asamites, but they're really hard to play properly.
Yeah,
because they're just so, as a background, they're just fucked. Actually, most of the stuff in Vampire, you're fucked.
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, I like that they included the old classic Nosferatu and made them hideous. That was a kind of nice touch as far as I was concerned.
I like Nazis, yeah. They've been, just a clan I quite enjoy. But no, I played a character for quite a while, and he was this reclusive Gangrel that lived outside the city on an estate. And basically just all the animals around him, because you get advantages that animals don't dislike you and actually sometimes actually like you. But he basically imprinted everything around him, and it was like this massive security system around his house.
Yeah. Well, incidentally, for the sake of the external, this clan is more along the lines of the Gypsy Vampire.
Oh, Ravnos.
Oh, that was Ravnos?
Yeah.
I'm misremembering. Oh, well. I know the Bruja were kind of like the bikers.
It's been about 6 years since I've even touched those books, but I did so much writing for it. You know what happens when you do that.
Yeah.
It'll just get stuck in your head.
That's no problem. I have no problem with being pointed out when I'm misremembering something. That's going to happen. It's been a long time.
Press 2 stuff. I did that. That's 24, 23 years ago, and I can still remember pretty much what I wrote, what I did, what we fixed.
I don't know. I mean, in my case, especially after the damn strokes, I ended up having to reconnect with my own freaking universe and my own work. And in book 2, had to kind of revisit some of the ancient history just to kind of reconnect with my universe in general. And that's stuff I've written for years. So remembering other people's stuff's even harder.
That's shitty.
Yeah.
Anyway, I should go and do some work and have some breakfast.
And I should probably do something vaguely useful at some point. But in any case, have yourself a good one, and I might end up trying to get some writing done or something.
Well, I am not going to be the one that impedes your progress.
By all means, granted, I'm emceeing 6 viewers. If anyone wants to come in and join me, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'm going to go back to being boring.
Actually, question to the audience: is the role-playing discussion, the whole writing discussion, is this grabbing your attention? If you want us to keep going, I'll stay for another 20 minutes if that's the case.
And it's going to take Cloud just to get a response, but it's all good, man. Let me move some of this stuff around the screen. Here we go. Get this over here. I don't even think I need a super dad there. It's usually somewhere in my channel. There we go. Just hide that for now. Shove it up here. There we go. Move it over in case anyone asks later. Probably not. And here's where I just start talking to myself like a lunatic. It was good having you dressed, though.
No worries, man. You take care.
Yep, you too. There we go. Once we go. Again, we have, 4 or 5 viewers. If anyone wants to join in, feel free to do so. The link should be out there in the description. I've also shared this with my weird Kagitoites who are smart and asleep. But in the meantime, let's see now. What do I have to do here? This is going to be a bitch of a section to actually write, and I'm going to have to move some stuff on my screen so I can see what the fuck I am doing here. Holy crap. Oh, I did post it in the Dragoons thingamabob apparently. Or did I? No, I didn't. Posted in a different... No, it's there. Okay, what the fuck am I looking at? I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, there we go. And move this out of the way. Actually, I don't even need that up there at all right now, do I? Let's pop it up here, I guess. Oh, whoops, I've black bordered myself. Let's move that. Let's see, is that up or down? Down, I think. Maybe? No, the other way. There we go. Okay, now pop that up and get it to bar width. Oh, all this is just get XSplit to vaguely do what I want it to. I don't know, I keep looking at those wondering if I should take out the apostrophe because people don't get that the apostrophe is to replace an I for is, but anyway. Oh, this scene is going to be miserable. Add source, screen cap, grab this crap if I can. Smart select, there we go. Grab this shit, and it's not going to show it, of course, because that's kind of how it tends to go, unless I change the settings. Let's do that. The default setting on XSplit, it won't actually show us inside of a window like this unless you turn off exclusive window control, and then it actually shows something. Not that y'all will be able to really see it anyway. Oh, by the way, hi Alexander, how you doing? I already said hi to Shane earlier. But I don't know. Do you think I should just kind of end this because it was a hangout with some actual content for a few moments there? Or what? I don't know. I'm still wide the fuck awake, so. I'm clearly not going anywhere soon. Interesting. One fun little footnote about coffee. If you're dehydrated, coffee will put you to sleep. If you're well hydrated, it'll keep you up. I am not well hydrated. It should be putting me to sleep, but it's not. I don't know. It usually works, but it's not like I'm that caffeinated right now anyway. I'm kind of starting to head towards the proverbial cognitive wall that I hit frequently anyway, so I really don't know much longer this is going to be going. But what I do know is the spot that I left off on here isn't quite right. Now, the particular scenario that I've set up at this point is an absolute nightmare from a writing perspective. In general, doing any kind of combat scene usually has a lot involved with it. In this case, there's the potential of up to 14 opponents that the main character is going to have to face. And this is not a pleasant circumstance because I gotta figure out whether it's even possible. Now, due to the nature of the stories and the fact that you have telepathy and all this kind of fun stuff, within this universe, there's a chance that the entire thing is just somebody fucking with her head, and one of the things that she has to do is try to figure out what is and isn't real. So we got a weird little conundrum with this, and I'm actually using, let me just grab it up here, seeing as I'm just battling at the screen right now, for the sake of helping stage out and make sure that I have the frames of reference properly. That's not the right button. This is screen cap. There we go. Let's grab, I clicked the wrong button. There we go. I always do that. Screen capture, window capture. Let's see if I can find the right one here. There we go. Okay. So what I've actually done is I've actually loaded up Roll20, seeing as the backbone, so to speak, of the stories that I tell these days are based upon the same universe that the role-playing system I devised happens in. It actually, on the most part, follows the same rules. Now, granted, you know, you're writing your main character and what have you. You do tend to play a little bit fast with the rules at times. But the biggest trick is trying to prevent the, we'll just call it plot armor, from becoming a major factor. You don't want the character to survive only because the plot demands it. Because that's something that, whether it be readers or viewers of a movie, will notice those moments that it's like, yeah, this is horseshit. They're wearing their plot armor, fuck you. And in order to keep it somewhat believable, you have to come up with ways to make sure that it's even conceivably possible. So there are times that what I'll do is load up something like Roll20 to track the amount of damage taken to make sure that what's going on in the scene is even plausible. Now, in addition to that, there's a bunch of other stuff that I always have to pull up because there is essentially what equates to a magic system. There's the 3 different forms of the mystic arts, or at least the 3 dominant ones, which is, I refer to it as the magic of the mind, the magic of the body, and the magic of nature, or the natural order. And so you have your psionics, your telepathy, and mental abilities. You then have Kobatoms, which can almost be equated to your anime-style martial arts. And then you have Mystrionics, which would be more of the classical magic, but I hate that fucking word, so I renamed it back in the day. And we're down to 1 viewer, which means I might be able to take this shit the fuck offline and get the hell to work. Yay! Okay. Actually, I think I might just do that. But yeah, once again, there is a link down there, so if somebody wants to pop in, because I do still technically have the Hangout active and just bullshit for a little bit, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'm just going to try and get the fuck to work. And Babylon mindlessly while doing so. We have our little main character down here. There's our main character. That doesn't actually properly represent her. It's just an icon I had available. And then we have all the potential opponents here, and I'm going to have to try to figure out a way to track all of this. And my brain not being quite what it used to be, it's going to take an app to do it. The other thing I'm going to have to do is decide which of these characters actually do or don't exist in that, seeing as she's under a little bit of mental influences causing her to be somewhat delusional at this particular point in the story. And we have 2 viewers. Oh, what do you know? Now, I'm going to be boring in a moment, so I don't know whether you're going to want to stick with me or find something else to watch. But I need to get the fuck to work. Let's see now. See where we left off here. Let me grab my glasses. Once again, this is book 3 that I'm actually working on. I almost don't want to do this online, and I usually switch them to unlisted after the fact, just for the simple fact that there will always be a level of spoilers involved, even when y'all can't actually read what the fuck's on screen. Let's see now, where are we at here? Got a ways to go here. So how y'all doing tonight? You suffering from insomnia or over across the pond or something like that? Or okay, let's strip that line out of there. That's just a placeholder so I know what the hell I'm doing. And let's just cut that out of there. Let's move my spacer down here. I got almost nothing done yesterday. And part of that is I'm just looking at the complexity of the scene, and that's holding me back a touch. Let's see now. Here we go. That's where it was. I should probably actually move that down because it's going to come into play again in a moment, or at least open a notepad to make sure I have it recorded. There are actually some apps out there that help you track your story and to make sure there's no inconsistencies and what have you. And somebody gave me a copy of one the other day, and I might look into it at some point, but I'm so used to going through, kind of a standard procedure in terms of the flow and how I tend to go about things that I have this weird resistance to use something that actually could be a very beneficial tool because you just get used to doing things a certain way. Okay, let's see now. And I don't actually have that in the doc. I'm going to have to move that. Or do I? Yes, I do. Okay, there we go. I have her patient number. Oh, why do I? Oh, I renamed him. I got to change that. Let me fix that. Thing is, the other name was drawn directly from my favorite anime. We need to get rid of that and go back to the name I actually changed it to, because fuck that. I don't want to be that obvious when I'm borrowing from other shit. Let's see now. With the framing of this particular scene, though, at this point, well, I don't know, spoilers. Yeah, this is the issue I run into, not wanting to get too deep into this stuff because spoiler territory. Yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna just save this for now with the notes as it is now, and I'm gonna close out a Roll20 for now, and I'll work on this properly tomorrow because, spoilers are a thing. Let's close out of this too. And I will deal with this after I've gotten myself some rest and have a morning and all that fun stuff, and get some of these windows out of my way. I don't know. I don't know. There's a point at which it's like, okay, this is going to be a little bit too spoilery, and I want to leave that out. I don't want to necessarily go through it online. This is something I'm going to have to deal with offline, unfortunately. Have tempted to just sit there because I do still have a couple of people listening. So the question is whether I just take it offline and what have you, or I don't know. Maybe I'll just read part of one of the books, a little promotion. I don't know. I think I'm just going to spin my wheel for a couple more seconds while I decide. So do we have anyone out there still actually listening, or have I managed to put everyone to sleep yet? Seeing as back in the day with the Insomnia Shuffles, part of the goal was to try to help people get back to sleep. And I'm seeing a whole lot of nothing. It might be safe to take her offline. That and at this hour, at this ridiculous fucking hour of the morning, I'm not likely to get much for additional viewers anyway. Well, I'll give it about a 20 count. Actually, better yet, I'm just going to sit back, smoke a cigarette, and see if we get any comments in the external. And if not, I'm going to assume that most people have managed to pass the fuck out. Which is probably best for them anyway. Hell, I should actually lay down at some point, but I don't necessarily see that happening anytime too soon. But yeah, I'm unfortunately at one of those stages in the chapter that A, it's going to be really difficult for me to work my way through, and B, it would be a little too spoilerific, so yeah. Seeing as I do know that I've had some sales, and I don't necessarily know where everyone is over the course of that, but I know at least one person's finished book one and enjoyed it, so that's nice. I'm hoping to hear back from some other people, and eventually getting some freaking reviews up there would be nice, because I'd like to see them. And having ratings and reviews on Amazon would actually help in theory with me trying to promote it elsewhere, which YouTube isn't the best place to necessarily be promoting this kind of stuff. I'm going to have to see about approaching some folks that actually do proper book reviews, whether it be through blogs or in some cases through platforms like YouTube or what have you, and see if I can use that to help get the word out. That, and of course, there are all these groups that you pay to, do the Twitter thing and have them tweet to their huge ass fucking audiences, and most of those aren't that bad price-wise. But everything I've made so far is going to be going into marketing, which, that's fun, I guess. And we're still at few viewers and still no additional commentaries, so I think I'm going to probably call this in a couple minutes. For those that watched for a little bit, thank you for joining. For those of you who I helped getting to sleep, rock the fuck on, because that's part of the point of running some of this shit. To give folks something to listen to chill out. And to those that have already helped either get their day started or go back to sleep, have a great one. And I'm going to go offline in 3, 2, no commentary, we'll go to 1. And good night, everyone.